climate change is being fought in one of the more remote parts of our region. Those behind the project to restore damaged peatland on the top of Northumberland's highest peak say it could have the same impact as planting 1,000 trees every year.
The work's being carried out nearly 3,000 feet above sea level at the top of the Cheviot. Because of the rugged terrain and the risk of damaging wildlife, those working on the project are having to climb it on foot day in and day out. Julia Bartham reports.
At the very end of the road, our journey is just beginning. So we've already driven nearly an hour from Wooler. How much further have we got to go?
We've got to walk an hour now, up to the top.
We're far in the north of Northumberland National Park. For park ecologist Jill Thompson, this is a daily trek.
Will it be hot at the top though? No, it'll be cold at the top normally. It can be really nice in the valley, but obviously you're at 815 metres at the top, and you can get cold winds, and sometimes it can be raining on the top when it's nice in the bottom, but fingers crossed it's not going to do that today.
Vegetation is thick on the ground as we climb, but the top of the Cheviot is a hostile place. Often above the clouds and whipped by the wind, plants worn away by generations of walkers and grazing sheep find it difficult to return to the bare earth.
So the flags are here to stop the erosion, so we'll walk on the flags.
Now the flags protect the ground and sheep have been removed, but the damage has already been done.
Here we are, summit of Cheviot, at 815 metres above sea level.
And this is the front line of the battle against climate change.
Yes, all this brown earth that you can see here, we really shouldn't have this. It shouldn't be open and exposed.
And it looks like there is a lot of exposed peat.
Yeah, it's a pretty big project.
The project is to restore the peatlands across a massive area the size of 241 football pitches. What is peat? Why is it so important it's kept in good condition?
Well, peat is partially decomposed plants. So plants are made up of carbon. They, if you remember from your biology lessons, they take in carbon dioxide from the air and form the body of the plant. And mostly when plants die, they get broken down in the soil. But when you've got wet, damp conditions, the plants don't break down completely. They only partially break down and they start building up. And that's what peat is, basically big store of carbon.
With the peat exposed as it is now, it's releasing 585 tonnes of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere every year. That's equivalent to an average car driving 57 times around the world. A blanket of vegetation is needed to trap the CO2 into the ground.
We've been bringing this plant up here. This is sphagnum moss. When we lose the vegetation in these areas, this plant goes and it's very hard to bring it back in. So we're giving it a helping hand by harvesting from areas where there's lots of this stuff growing. We've been lower down the hill 2 days ago collecting black bags full of this thing and then bringing it up the hill, and then today we're planting it out. We'll be doing that again and again over the rest of this year.
But simply replanting isn't enough. Specialist diggers have been carefully driven to the summit to reprofile the land. Erosion has caused gullies known as peat hags where plants can't take hold. The diggers will delicately lift the vegetation and smooth the land below along 29 kilometres of peat hags. Volunteers and experts work together to complete this gigantic task.
Bethan, you've walked a long way to get here. Why have you decided to join in and volunteer on this?
I do a lot of volunteering with the National Park because I'm genuinely passionate about nature and environment. Particularly climate change is, as like young generation, it's something we've been really impacted on, so it feels really good to just get out. I mean, it's a beautiful day. And actually do something that's really good for like locally but also professionally.
The weather isn't often as good as it was on this day, and combined with the remote location creates some serious challenges, but the project will continue until the land is restored.
There's more carbon stored in all the peatlands in the world than there is in the forest. There are some places where trees don't really belong, and here right up at 800 metres where we've got these deep peat soils, the best thing to do is to protect these soils and do this revegetation. So there are other ways that the natural world can help us with climate change.
Today's workers begin the journey back down the Cheviot, but once restored, these peatlands will begin their own work. Not only will they stop releasing CO2, they'll start to absorb it and lock it in.
Well, let's join Julia now in the Northumberland National Park. Julia, that was spectacular scenery in your report and behind you. Very interesting to hear the work that's going on. This is part of a much larger project across the whole country, isn't it?
That's right. Peatlands are the biggest store of carbon dioxide in the country, holding more CO2 than all the trees across the UK. But degraded peatlands are releasing 11 million tonnes of CO2 into the atmosphere every year. The government has recognised that, and as part of its 25-year environment plan, it's put £10 million into projects to tackle this. But even here in Northumberland, there's more that could be done. This project just tackles the part of the Cheviot owned by the College Valley estate, and the Northumberland National Park say if they had more funds available, there are many other areas they could tackle.
And as well as the climate change, the project's also helping in the battle against other local environmental problems, isn't it?
It is, yes. The sphagnum moss that we heard about there in the report holds 25 times its dry weight in water. And by having that in place on the top of Cheviot, it really affects the runoff of water down to the valleys below. That has a positive effect in reducing the patterns of flooding in the valleys below. And it also improves the water quality in the rivers, which makes it better for the drinking water that we all consume, but also for the fish that live in those rivers. So a very local positive impact, but a global one as well.
Julia, so important in so many ways. Thank you very much from the Northumberland National Park. A man has been charged with